Welcome back to Historical Terminology. Today we're going to be talking about monarchy and what that means and kind of its historical significance. So what is a monarchy? Well, monarchy is a system of government where a country is ruled by a royal family. The one that you're probably most familiar with, right, would be England, with their royal weddings and royal children and the princess and the princesses and Queen Elizabeth. Um, but there are other monarchies out there. Um, and something that's kind of goes hand in hand with monarchy oftentimes is what's called a feudal system or feudalism. And that's what happens when people swear loyalty to the king. In exchange, the king pledges to protect those people. And so there's kind of this symbiotic relationship between the king and this group of people who help him enforce his rule. And that's a feudal system. So what is an example of a feudal monarchy? Well, I've got three up here on the slide on the screen here. We've got the emperors of Japan, definitely run a feudal monarchy. Not anymore, obviously. Now they're democratic and their emperor is mostly a figurehead. But for a long time, the imperial family ran a feudal monarchy. In England, like I mentioned, they had a feudal monarchy. They their kind of monarchical rule came to an end much earlier than most monarchies did because of the institution of parliament and England becoming more democratic. And then the Aztecs also had a feudal monarchy of sorts, with a leader on top and people who swore loyalty to their leader. So how do kings get their power? How do monarchies begin? Well, oftentimes kings gain their power originally through some sort of conquest or by being the strongest of a group of strong men. And so the strength of arms allows kings to gain powerful followers. And by being the strongest, the king could then become an absolute ruler over his domain. And so really kings became powerful through military might and conquest. And then afterwards, how do they maintain their power? Well, once they've created their kingdom, oftentimes kings would tie their right of governance to some sort of divine providence. So what they would say is like, well, it's obviously because God wanted me to be king that I've become king, and my family should rule because of God's might and God's will is flowing through my family. And this is what's called the divine right of kings. And this meant that the king was kind of placed on the throne, even though it might have been through like violence or war, but by God. God allowed him to win, and so now he's ruling due to God's divine favor. And you can find that in just about any country that has a king. In England, it certainly happened, right? God, the Christian God, was behind the kings of England. In the Aztec Empire, the Aztec gods were the ones who gave their ruler the right to rule. Gods gave the Japanese emperors the rights to rule. All those sorts of things. So power in these systems comes from a place of like powerful faith. And so oftentimes lots of kingdoms are also what are called theocracies. So they have strict religious rules and ties to religion in their governing structure. If a family were to lose its position as like a ruler, it would often be considered that they had like suffered God's wrath. So they had angered the God in some way, and so now they're suffering because of that. So now there are very few royal families left. I mean, there still are some, but for the most part, families, right, who are royal families aren't actually governing anymore. So most royal families are forced to give up their power, or they gave it up on their own, and are now merely just kind of like figureheads. And so a lot of the royal families in Europe are often tasked with like helping the country in various ways, like they join the military, or they become diplomats, or they do stuff like that, but they're not really like but they're working within the democratic norms of their government. There are other royal families who do actually still lead. So, for example, the Saud family in Saudi Arabia, they run that country like they're the government. What they say goes. So, um, there are still kings out there. It's just not as common as it used to be. Here are some of our current royal families that are around in this isn't an exhaustive list, but it is a list of people who run countries. Like I mentioned earlier, the House of Saud in Saudi Arabia runs that country. King Muhammad VI is the king of Morocco, and he had to give up some of his power during the Arab Spring, but he is still the leader of that country. And the Pope is the king of the Vatican City. The Vatican City is considered a country, and the Pope is its leader, so he is a king. Um, Figurehead kings that you might know about. Norway and Sweden both have royal families. Um, they're still technically kingdoms, even though they have democratic institutions. King Juan Carlos I of Spain ended up yielding his power after the fall of the fascist regime in Spain, and he ended up yielding his power and paved the way for the current democracy that is governing Spain at the time. And then, of course, like I mentioned, the Yamato dynasty of Japan began in 660. It is the oldest running royal family in our on our planet that we know of. We're not 100% sure, but we're pretty sure that it's the longest continuous one, at least that's made it to this day, right? So it's pretty significant. Here are some notable historical royal families that have wielded that kind of monarchical power. The Habsburgs of Austria-Hungary um, ruled over Austria-Hungary for a long time in many other different periods. That family had a large reach in Europe. Um, they were the Holy Roman Emperors for a very long time. They ran Austria and Hungary. They had members of their family were part of the French royal family, the Spanish royal family. You could find Habsburgs pretty much everywhere that you went that had a king. You could find a Habsburg somewhere. Um, in fact, one of the last Habsburgs recently passed away about 6 or 7 years ago, and he was a diplomat. He was related to that family, so he was still serving his country even though he wasn't in charge of it. The Qing dynasty of China was the last dynasty of the Chinese government. It fell apart in 1912, and it collapsed mostly due to foreign pressure and infighting. So the country was kind of fighting within itself, and foreign countries were trying to kind of wiggle their way into China's affairs, and the country kind of kaputted after that. And then, of course, people might know the Romanovs of Russia. They were the royal family there, and that family, a lot of them did escape, but the main family of the Romanovs were executed by the Bolsheviks, and the Kingdom of Russia fell apart, and then it became the USSR. So those are some notable historical families. Thanks for watching, learning about monarchy. Um, We'll have another historical term coming up for you soon. Hope you enjoyed and that you learned something. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day.